What feels like a cult, and is in fact a cult? Technically they're nutrition clubs. They have some rules in place to dodge FDA regulation, so they're not actually selling a smoothie or a tea, it's a one-day membership that comes with a smoothie or tea. They also don't advertise except through social media and word of mouth. And apparently it results in Herbalife fucking over the owners of the clubs, because the point of the clubs is to recruit new members to Herbalife and not to sell things, which makes it a terrible business model for the actual club owner. In North Jersey 90% of them are only Spanish-speaking, converted bodegas, or ground-floor homes with the same exact decor, green and orange tulle curtains. I don't know why. But I see a badly painted orange or lime green shop and just plastic chairs, I know what's going on inside. Definitely targeting poor families too, uneasy face. Same, Mary Kay meeting. They gave 2 tickets for a draw at the end of the evening, don't remember the prizes, but when it was my turn to receive the tickets, I only got one because I was wearing pants, clean, job pants, instead of a skirt. Also, the girl that was leading the meeting started to give cheap ribbon awards to everyone present for ridiculous reasons. Some got more than one, and one girl got one because she answered an email. Everyone cheerfully clapped. They also talked about how that restaurant manager that refused to allow a box in the women's bathroom with Mary Kay publicity and free samples was stupid to turn them down, that she didn't understand business and lost such a good opportunity. How about respecting people's decisions? That manager said she didn't want to be associated with those products, that's all. I would honestly put Amway at the top. They largely created and perfected the modern MLM model. Especially when you realize that the DeVos family, yes, the alternative facts DeVos, is partially behind it. Edit, sorry, wrong Trump-appointed blonde asshole, there were so many. Guess he had a type. Betsy DeVos was the Trump-appointed blonde asshole who was head of the Department of Education, who believed public schools were overfunded. Throwaway account. My child's mother is a Scientologist. In deep posters, books, pamphlets, etc. Frequents church quite a lot. Believes LRH is a great man. I've tried to have convos with her, and her husband, about it, but they are excruciating. It always leads to having to watch a video about it. I've been to one of the churches. It's literally an infomercial inside a building. Books for sale all over, shocking, and all written by L. Ron even though he's been dead for decades. They'll spend hours in an auditing session while my child sits in the lobby watching YouTube, which they don't monitor. I know way more about Scientology than I ever wanted to know, and I still don't know enough. And I'm very wary about my child growing up with it as an influence. There is a post from a lass who's literally doing her best to escape them right now on r/entitled people. Lass didn't want to be in it, but her parents got sucked in and now she's kinda stuck. She moved away from them and tried to go non-social as possible, but they've tracked her down and now she has 2 stalkers from said cult on her arse all the time who go through her bins, and now has her parents emailing her landlord with lies about her being a drug abuser and how they really didn't think it was a good idea to continue letting me live on my own in his house, and that he should help convince me to go back to them where they can get me back in line. Luckily the landlord and his neighbors are all on her side, but she says they have members in the police force who might quash any police protection requests or calls to arrest the stalkers, or might just straight up drag her from her home if she goes to them. I was sent to a wilderness program for being a troubled teen, and I can say with 100% confidence that my issues only worsened because of it. I am still working with a therapist to deal with the trauma that program caused me. The feeling of being stripped out of your bed at 2 a.m. and being put on a plane, not being told where I was going, with 2 large security guards keeping me hostage is something I will never forget. And that isn't even the tip of the iceberg compared to the things they did to me and other kids once I got there. Shit needs to be illegal, it goes against fundamental rights. Chief's mess in the US Navy, which comes complete with initiation, something no other branch, enlisted or officer, has, and that this somehow forms an eternal bond of blood by family, that includes eating food out of trash cans and sabotaging uniforms for the greater lesson. Then private meetings that have gray areas/secrets of what happens in those meetings. Specifically anything related to punishments or review boards. The fact that it takes 2 chiefs talking behind closed doors to get anything accomplished is also proof. People notice, though it's implied that it's not noticed. I once had a friend try to get me to go to a meet with them. They posed it as, "You're helping me out because I have to practice, this meeting will be with my mentor." One look into Primerica and I sent my friend a long email with just a few reasons why it was a scam. I said, "If you still want me to go, I'd be happy to talk to your mentor about all of this and explain why it's scammy." I was afraid it would put a damper on the friendship, but they were actually really nice about it and replied with a "Thanks so much, I didn't know this information before." We're still really good friends now. I've found out that if anyone advertises they are an entrepreneur, they are more likely to be a scammer/faker than an actual business owner. Like, I know a guy that owns an excavating company. When he meets people and they ask what he does, he doesn't say, "I'm an entrepreneur," he says, "I work in excavation," or says he owns an excavation company. Only people saying they are entrepreneurs are wannabes in my experience. Silicon Valley tech companies are not a cult. However, there is a subculture within Silicon Valley tech companies that is a cult. Here are some things to watch out for. Sleep deprivation. If your team wants you to do overnight on call, and overnight pages happen more often than once every 7 on-call shifts, your team is a cult. Training versus guilt. If your team assumes that you already know all the details of the tech you work with, and dumps weird guilt on you when you don't know an obscure fact, your team is a cult. My mother and stepfather are witnesses. I was not raised as one, she converted about 20 years ago, I was already an adult. It has completely destroyed our relationship. Every life event, every tragedy, everything is used to shove it down your throat. I'm all for freedom of religion. The problem with them is that even if you accept their choice of belief, they are unwilling to accept yours if it is not JW. After years of tolerating them pushing their shit on my children and myself, telling my kids your mom doesn't know what she's talking about, and ensuring every life event became a massive fight, I finally had to cut them off. They refused to attend my child's funeral because I held the service in a church. My mother and I used to have a friend who was a Jehovah's Witness, and I would have to agree. She would not leave me alone when it came to trying to persuade me to join her religion, and one day I gave in and went to one of the Kingdom Halls, and it had such a creepy, unsettling vibe to it, probably because I'm a Christian and everyone I was introduced to there likely believed I was under Satan's influence, because that's what they believe about anyone who isn't a JW. She also would not let me hang out with her after school or anyone who wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. Not to mention they enable sexual abuse and claim there needs to be a second witness to sexual abuse, which is impossible because it usually only involves 2 people, and think the answer is to educate parents rather than for people to not molest children. XJW here. Raised in the religion. It's absolutely batshit. When I would tell stories in front of friends or non-JW acquaintances, they'd look at me like I was crazy. It's not even just the horrific way they handle abuse, it's even the way they manipulate language. It's entirely Orwellian. They'll take a word like worldly, which is generally a positive thing, and manipulate it into meaning something sinister and evil. Worldly is used to mean something that is outside of the organization and manipulated by the very literal Satan and his demons. They use equivocation frequently, such as arguing that the faithful should not watch American Idol because the Bible argues against idolatry. They also use constant terrorism to manipulate and control. They target people that are vulnerable, like single-parent families and immigrants, and offer them help before pressuring them into joining the group. They constantly advertise a bloody and literal Armageddon where fire will rain from the sky. This is even in their children's book of Bible stories. If you do something they consider wrong, you are disfellowshipped, which, unlike excommunication, means that not a single member is allowed to communicate with you. That includes your parents, children, and siblings, even if you live with them. It is only lifted when the elders, church leadership, decide you are really sincere in your effort to seek forgiveness, despite teaching that only Jehovah knows what is in your heart. I was one of those lonely latchkey kids that grew up in the 80s. Home alone all the time, parents working their backbreaking immigrant jobs. A pair of JWs came to my door once and I opened it and talked to them in the doorway for a half hour, as I was really interested in religion. It was a father and son and they were both super smart. They gave me the brochures and came back every Sunday for a few weeks. I really thought they just wanted to talk. I was like 10 maybe, because they never acted like cult members except for inviting me to go to their meetings or whatever, but I always politely declined and kept talking with them about the religions of the world. Then one Sunday they didn't show up and I never saw them again. Wonder what I said to scare them off? My family were JWs for a few years and I agree with you. It's creepy how much it influences every aspect of the lives of the followers. I.e., married couples should not have oral sex since that's what homosexuals do. My older brother stayed in when we left. He isn't allowed to talk to my mom, since she turned her back on Jehovah. I'm not shunned because I was a kid when we entered and left. So every time I move to a new house, and the witnesses first come to my door, I say, I was raised a witness and it ripped my family apart. I know everything you have to say and I don't want to hear it. And they write a note next to my address and don't come back. Within the cancer community there's a political group who have all read, probably, Chris Beat Cancer, and it's a bullshit book telling you can cure cancer by changing your diet. Sugar is the main villain. You can fight me all you want but sugar does not cause cancer. Listen to your oncology-approved dietitian and get the fuck off Facebook. Just this past weekend I had lunch with my friend's dad who is also terminal and his wife has banned him from sugar because of this bullshit. The dude is dying and he's not even allowed to enjoy himself in moderation. Because she heard about it on Facebook. Edit. Chemo brain often forgets the huge difference between nutritionist and dietitian. Sorry, my bad. And finally, I'm done arguing. Thanks everybody. Please listen to the cancer patient in your life and what they want. Do they want to change their diet? Absolutely go for it, but make sure they're getting the right nutrition from a qualified professional. Do what they want. You actually have no idea. We really need to shift our current state of cancer care to a more palliative, not hospice, big distinction, model. A cancer patient that is as relatively happy as can be has the potential to increase their outcome. And finally, donate blood and sign up for betamatch.org. We need you. We had this fight with my grandma. out of state, happened to be visiting her in hospice when they did a team conference, so I sat in on it on my mom's medical power of attorney and also out of state behalf. My aunt was the one doing a lot of the day-to-day since she lived in town. She was having them deny my dying 94-year-old grandma cookies because she wanted her to be gluten-free, no kind of gluten intolerance/allergy/celiac, and no reason to suspect it. So my mom had to tell them to give her all the cookies she wanted. When I had cancer, people gave me a lot of unsolicited advice. I was told to do a number of bullshit diets, and to not use Western medicine. I had no tact at that time, I was so exhausted and sick. I would just remind people that I was a single mother who did not have fuck around and find out money for alternative healthcare, and it would be cruel to deny my children their mother because some idiot told her to change her diet and she died. I asked a few people if they were volunteering to pay for my funeral. Yep. Came here to say landmark. They take your money, your time, your labor, and what they really want is your family. They won't let up until you bring them your family. They hammer you with calls to come back when you quit. They make leaving the forum an impossible joke. They gaslight you, telling you the door is open and you're free to leave, but will single you out and harass you on your way out, or call your phone with the entire forum to get you to come back. It's just yuck. As someone that grew up in a dying church of this belief, it does not get better regardless of how lax they become to try keeping the congregation. Also, they support pretty much any kind of abuse in the home. One church took my mom's side, one church took my stepdad's side, and I was ignored when it came out that stepdad was into diddling me over my mom, and mom did nothing but blame me. All after she brainwashed me to basically be a live enslaved to care for my half-siblings and keep the house clean. Narcissist, I've been told. I will never ever go to any church ever again because forgiveness also somehow means an entire lack of accountability, and the victim isn't their problem and should be rejected and reviled for being a homewrecker and scarlet letter. I wasn't even a teenager when it started. I was homeschooled. Who the crap was I supposed to tell? When I was a teenager, my dad dragged me to a Pentecostal church once because he wanted me to find God or something. What I found actually just pushed me further away from religion. People freaking the fuck out in the pews with their hands in the air to some odd hymns, a pastor who seemed like he was genuinely mentally deranged, and a youth session that tried to mash together science and Christianity via senseless connections while repeatedly calling evolution a lie. God, I hated it. My relatives belonged to one such church, and it used to be so annoying when they'd visit. They'd get pissed if we had a normal radio station on. Couldn't watch any non-Christian movies or television, they about lost their shit over Labyrinth. If we went to stay with them, they'd hide our regular clothes and make us wear Little House on the Prairie dresses. We always had to accommodate and bend over for them, it was never the other way around. We never missed a graduation or wedding of theirs, but they refused to attend ours. Every celebration, graduations, weddings, anniversaries, or funeral is just an excuse for the male preachers to talk about themselves and how great they are. They literally take turns passing the mic around to crow about themselves at funerals. When I was a teenager, one of the preachers would always glom onto me and take every opportunity to touch me in some way. He'd make me so uncomfortable I'd end up hanging out with my parents, which no teenager wants to do. Turns out the asshole was a pedo preying on the young girls in the church. You'd think that'd be a wake-up call, right? Nah. Some members were mad and reported him, while others snuck him down to TX to hide from authorities. Suddenly a bunch of their members were moving down to TX, because the whack jobs care more about the man who was raping their children, than they do about protecting their kids. It's basically just a big cesspool of men who would be incels if they didn't have this little church, primping and peacocking for each other, pretending to love Jesus, while allowing their leaders free access to their kids.